The isms tell the story of the way American philosophy has changed throughout history. From the limiting ideas of the Puritans that demanded perfection and stressed the whole, to the writings of modernism, which brought people to share brutal imperfections about their identities. The contrast between the isms show how drastically America has altered its beliefs, as well as what caused those alterations. But these changes seem to mirror not only the evolution of American values and writing over hundreds of years, but also the evolution of our lives from birth to wherever we are now. This is my life through the isms. I grew up in Eagan, Minnesota in a small but neighborly cul-de-sac. All the boys played hockey and all the girls ice skated, even slightly tubby me. I rode a yellow school bus each morning, and the bus stop was the house 2 yards down from me, Michelle's house. Michelle's mom had Tupperware parties and yard sales every weekend. None of this was a problem except that her and her posse never missed the chance to imply to my mother that she was abandoning her responsibilities of childcare to work a corporate job. Michelle's mom never let Michelle invite me to her weekly sleepovers. I'd sit in the bay window and watch the children walk from the houses in the cul-de-sac down the street with their sleeping bags and stuffed animals each Friday. As badly as they outcasted my mother, these Christian suburban moms treated the Jewish family down the street even worse. Just like the Puritans, these soccer moms believed they were the chosen ones. God had handpicked them for heaven whether they liked it or not. They treated the Jewish families the Puritans treated the Indians, with bias and prejudice. They treated my mother as the colonies had treated Hester Prynne, questioning her as a neighbor for her out-of-norm choices and punishing her family for her differences. They worked hard to establish the community. They volunteered at the school, held bake sales and Christmas parties and barbecues. They kept their lawns, their children, and themselves clean, uncontroversial, and nice to look at. They were hypercritical not only of the outsiders, but of their fellow friends and peers. Nobody could ever be good enough. Nobody was safe in this ongoing witch hunt. The Stepford Wives atmosphere created a community that somehow made everyone feel as though they were on the outside looking in. I began to buy into it. For the first 8 years of my life, I willingly went to the Christian church with my scratched dresses and itchy tights. I worshipped Michelle and made fun of the kids she disliked. I believed that I was different than the other kids at school because I was friends with the right people. I believed I was better than the Jewish family down the street who never came to the barbecues. Despite all this, I was my mother's child, and my mother was a female primary breadwinner who didn't keep her Tupperware in order and sometimes forgot to mow the lawn. I was an outcast before I even began. And no matter how hard I tried, my destiny had been made for me. I was not a child of God, aka the cul-de-sac. I was a sinner in a world of other sinners who never admitted to sinning. With the approach of a Minnesota winter, as well as the crash of the housing market, my family migrated to the state of Washington. For the first time in my life, there were numerous pine trees and fog and people who weren't white. We were presented with the daunting task of making a foreign place feel like home. We embraced a combination of fear for the unknown and excitement for the unknown. I had gone 8 years without ever leaving Minnesota, and now here I was, away from my friends, my house, and my suburban cul-de-sac. I discovered my new frontier, and with it, the first major changes I had ever experienced. As exciting as it was to be in a new place, it was the loneliest place I had ever been. I spent my time writing and drawing up small books on folded sheets of 8 by 11.5 paper. I talked to the gigantic rosemary bush in our backyard and retreated to the duck pond every weekend to pick wild blackberries and feed the ducks stale bread. My life was a tidal wave of unexplainable, unidentifiable emotion. I was angry all of the time about nothing. I yelled at my dad, I yelled at my mom, I yelled at my brothers, I just yelled. I was violent for the first time at school. I pushed another kid's head into a wall for God knows what. Everything was emotional and hard, and it seemed like the only things that understood me were the pine cones on the side of the road. They were just as pathetic and out of place as I was. My attempts to get away included aggressive Hannah Montana binges, eating, and reading Goosebump books at the library out of the tween section. Just as the writers of the Romanticism era had created a world of literature to help ease worldly troubles, my mind created images of me flying away with big white wings. My imagination fueled my life. It brought me back from the dead as the optimism of a new world suddenly turned into the sadness of a rainy Seattle winter. If you skip ahead just a few years in our story, I'm walking into a California high school wearing black eyeshadow, a black sweater, black Vans, and a bad attitude. The years preceding had brought chaos. My best friend had turned into more than a best friend, and then we were nothing. My parents got divorced, my older brother and my support system went away to college. I wanted nothing to do with anyone because everyone was trouble. I figured friends would leave or lie or gossip, so there was no point. Love didn't exist anymore and dating only ended in heartbreak. School didn't matter, and everything I did was met with doubt and failure. It was easy to stop trying and give up. It was easy to assume that the kids in my high school were horrible before I gave them a chance. I did things I wasn't proud of in high school because my head was in a bad place, because every day was an uphill battle and I had no clue who I was. I didn't know what I thought was good versus bad. I didn't know whether my music taste was made up of my own likes or those of my friends around me. I didn't know what I was supposed to do with myself the rest of the year, much less the rest of my life. Just as modernism was brought upon by a war, the ongoing battle I faced in middle school spiraled me into a collapse of values and a general hopelessness. It was near impossible to be optimistic and to be happy, as I imagine it was for the writers stuck in the modernism era. From freshman year of high school to where I am now, I have gained the attitude of existentialism. I suppose it began with my discovery for my love of music. With the discovery of my man-made purpose came the idea that just like Sisyphus, I too will be happy as long as I continue to bring music into the world. It was my rock to push up the hill. With this discovery came the proof that with hard work comes reward. Every hour of work materialized into a song or skill at performing. I was beginning to discover who I was and understand that who I became was a direct result of the things I did and said. Every hour of homework led to a better grade. Every hour at work led to another fun night out at the movies or shopping. My work was starting to pay off. My life was starting to be exactly what I made of it. I was beginning to take responsibility. With my first real relationship came the burden of taking responsibility for my actions. I watched another person's happiness correlate with mine for the first time. I watched their life reflect off how I treated them. So yes, between the car, the job, the passion for music, the improved schoolwork, the serious relationship, my independence grew. And with it, the idea that the only person I can change or heavily rely on is myself. I gave up on excuses. I gave up on blaming my mother when I was late for school because she forgot to wake me up. I gave up on blaming my significant other when there was a problem with a relationship I made up 50% of. I gave up blaming everyone around me but myself, and I was much, much happier. Just as existentialism believes, I was free to choose. I realized I got to choose whether I was pleasant to be around. My time wasn't designated for me. I got to choose how I spent it. If music was more important than school, that was a choice I could make, even if it came with consequences. It was still my choice. The freedom of getting to completely choose who I was not only exhilarated, but also terrified me. I struggled with the idea of death. I struggled with the amount of choices I could make and what path each one would take me on. I struggled with the contradictions that everyone faces in their life. And yes, it seemed near impossible to hold two opposed thoughts in my head at the same time and still be a person. But I continued to do it, and I do it today. I know that I will die and that my life will cease to exist, but I also know that I must believe what I do in my lifetime is important, because the alternative is depression. I know that my actions will probably not affect the world, but they are still important because they will affect the people that I love and myself. I know that I must be harsh on myself so I become a person I'm proud of, but I can't be too harsh or I'll ruin my life. I know that I'm in control of the direction my life takes, but I am also not in control of everything that happens to me. The isms have carried America through quite a few lifetimes of thought. Through these isms, we see how important it is to our empathy and understanding of each other to identify how and why these isms came to be and what they mean. This empathy carries over to how our thoughts and ideas change throughout a single lifetime, and how the understanding of the changes of an entire nation apply to everyone in this room.